A tempest marked the start of it all. The lights flickered and then vanished, leaving the house enveloped in shadows. In that darkness, nestled against him, I unearthed a longing so profound it filled me with fear. This is the tale of how I ventured into uncharted territory with someone I never should have, forever changing the course of my marriage. The evening when everything transformed, the rain fell without mercy, beating against the windows like a restless suitor. The distant thunder rumbled, deep and unsettled. I lingered in the kitchen, drying my hands on a dish towel, attuned to the storm's cadence. My husband, Thomas, was away again, off on another business trip, leaving behind another empty bed. The silence in the house was palpable. My stepson, Lucas, was home, though 22, all lean muscle and quiet confidence, the kind of man who navigated the world as if he possessed a clear vision of his desires. He possessed his father's defined jawline, yet carried his mother's deep, perceptive eyes that seemed to hold a secret, lingering just a moment too long when he believed I wasn't watching. I convinced myself it was all in my head. Suddenly, darkness enveloped the space. A flash of lightning cleaved the heavens, and the home was enveloped in stillness. The refrigerator's hum faded away. The TV flickered off, leaving only the sound of the rain and the rapid rhythm of my breath. "Wow," Lucas whispered from the living room. I searched for my phone, activating the flashlight. The light sliced through the shadows, trembling in my uncertain grip. "The power is out," I remarked, pointing out the evident, "Yeah, no kidding." His voice was nearer than I anticipated. I pivoted, and there he stood, scarcely a foot from me. The flashlight illuminated his face with stark shadows, accentuating the curve of his lips and the way his t-shirt hugged his chest. He must have just left the gym. I could detect the subtle musk of sweat, a raw essence beneath the fresh aroma of his body wash. My throat felt parched. "Have you looked at the breaker?" I inquired, perhaps a bit too hastily. "Yeah, it's the storm." He shifted, and in the dim light, I caught a glimpse of his gaze falling, if only for a moment, to the V of my blouse. I ought to have taken a step back. I ought to have concocted an excuse, retreated upstairs, and secured myself in my room until dawn. However, I chose not to. Then I stumbled. A wayward rug, a foolish miscalculation. My ankle twisted, and I stumbled forward with a sharp intake of breath. Lucas seized me, his grip steady on my waist. However, the force was overwhelming. We collapsed onto the couch, with me positioned above him, my legs draped over his hips. That's when I understood that the bond we shared had ventured into perilous grounds. His body reacted before he could conceal it, and mine, dear God, responded. Warmth surged through my cheeks, my stomach, and lower still. My breath caught in my throat as I attempted to rise, but his hold only grew stronger, anchoring me where I was. This is something I desired as well. In that infinite moment, we remained completely still. The atmosphere crackled, laden with an ominous tension. His heartbeat pulsed against me, quick and erratic, as our bodies intertwined. His breath caressed my lips with warmth. I found it enjoyable. His hands glided up my sides, slow and intentional. "Lucas," I murmured. His response came as a harsh breath, his hips moving subtly beneath me, revealing the depth of his desire. Desired me. I let it continue. Instead, I bent down, and in the shadows, with the tempest howling outside, a fleeting moment of vulnerability transformed into a kiss that was never meant to be. My name is Lillian Hayes, and prior to that night, prior to the storm, prior to the power outage, prior to him, I was a completely different person. I was consistent, dependable, the type of partner who recalled special dates, maintained a pristine home for visitors, and ensured the wine never ran out during gatherings. Thomas, my husband, referred to me as his rock, a compliment. I assume, though at times it felt more like a life sentence. It was a decade ago when I first encountered Thomas at a charity gala held in the heart of downtown Chicago. He exuded a refined charm, with salt and pepper hair and a Rolex that likely surpassed the value of my car, his smile radiating a sense of reliability. At 32, I found myself newly divorced, grappling with the lingering pain of a marriage broken by my ex-husband's betrayal. Thomas stood apart, steadfast and reliable. After a year of dating, we tied the knot. He captivated me with extravagant getaways, soft-spoken assurances of safety, and a residence in the suburbs where the grass was perpetually lush and the neighbors maintained a serene silence. Next came Lucas, the stepson of Thomas. My stepson. When I first encountered Lucas, he was just 12, enveloped in brooding silences, still tender from the aftermath of his parents' divorce. His mother had relocated to Italy with her new husband, abandoning him as if he were an afterthought. I attempted to show kindness and a nurturing spirit, but Lucas had no desire for a stand-in mother. He was, nonetheless, intrigued by the prospect of observing me. Initially, I convinced myself it was merely a figment of my imagination, the way his eyes seemed to linger when I bent down to retrieve a fallen napkin, the way he was perpetually shirtless whenever I walked by his room, the way he'd flash a smirk when Thomas wasn't paying attention, as if he held a secret about me that I was unaware of. I chose to overlook it. I was compelled to. Because I was Lillian Hayes, the devoted partner, the reliable presence. Until that night, I was not. Our union had its flaws. Thomas spent more time away than he did at home, leaving me in that vast, vacant house, accompanied only by my thoughts and sporadic messages assuring me he'd return soon, next week, next month. Once this deal was finalized, I reassured myself that it was of no concern. Yet, I would find Lucas's gaze on me from across the dinner table, his knee lightly grazing mine underneath, and a stirring sensation would coil within me. It wasn't solely him. It was me. The way I began to change my style when I knew he'd be around, opting for a lower neckline and a snugger sweater. The way I would hang around in the kitchen when he was present, feigning indifference as his gaze followed the shape of my waist. I found myself dancing with flames, relishing the warmth they brought. On the night of the storm, the power outage was expected to be a mere annoyance. Yet, in that moment, I found myself enveloped in his embrace. In that moment, I found myself above him. In that moment, I sensed his presence. And when our lips met in the dark, a part of me broke apart. His kiss began softly, then turned fervent. His hands tangled in my hair, rested on my hips, drawing me nearer until every inch of space vanished between us. I ought to have paused when the lights came back to life. We separated abruptly, like teenagers caught in a moment of indiscretion. Lucas's lips were puffy, his eyes wide and glassy, his chest rising and falling as if he had just sprinted a long distance. I found it impossible to meet his gaze. I was captivated. Silence enveloped us. What could possibly be expressed? We had just stepped over a boundary that was forever beyond our reach. "I am your stepmother," I stated. "This can never happen again." Yet, as I rushed to my room, my body still resonating with the echo of his touch, I realized one undeniable truth: it would happen again. The following morning, I found a message from Thomas waiting for me. "Flight delayed. I won't be back until Thursday." Just 3 more days. 3 more days of this heat coursing through me, this guilt lodged in my throat, this lingering memory of Lucas's lips against mine. I dressed with intention, slipping into a silk blouse that Thomas had chosen for me, claiming it complimented my eyes, black slacks that embraced my hips, a touch of perfume gracing my wrists and collarbone. I deceived myself. In the kitchen below, Lucas moved with ease, shirtless, expertly scrambling eggs as if the world around him had remained unchanged. The muscles in his back rippled with each movement, causing a flutter of tension in my stomach. He pivoted at the sound of my presence, his gaze sweeping across me, measured and intentional. "Morning," he said, his voice gravelly. I ought to have turned and left. Instead, I moved in closer. The initial occurrence took place in the laundry room, an absurd setting for a secret rendezvous, nestled between the detergent and the hum of the dryer, with the morning sun spilling through the small window. I had entered to fetch a towel. Lucas trailed behind. The door clicked shut, sealing him off from the world beyond. Silence enveloped us. His hands found their way to me, guiding my movements, pushing me against the washing machine as it hummed and vibrated beneath us. I desired it. His lips collided with mine, more fervent than the night before, insatiable. I inhaled sharply, and he absorbed the sound, his fingers pressing into my hips. "Command me to halt," he whispered against my lips. I did not. His rough hands brushed against my skin. I leaned into him. A jarring thud echoed as the cycle engaged. Water surged in, and the drum whirred to life beneath me. Lucas wore a sly grin. "Looks like we're not the only ones getting soaked today." I pressed my lips to his chest, laughter bubbling up, breathless, feeling more alive than I had in years. His lips brushed against my neck, his knee gently urging my legs apart. And in that moment, all rational thought slipped away. In the aftermath, I anticipated remorse. It never arrived. Only this desire wound tightly within me, more piercing than any embarrassment. Lucas traced lazy circles on my bare shoulder as we lay intertwined on his bed. His room. Oh, his childhood room, with baseball trophies still adorning the shelves. "Your thoughts are echoing too loudly," he whispered. I found myself reflecting on Thomas, recalling how he'd press his lips to mine in farewell, while his gaze remained fixed on his phone. How it had been months since he last reached for me, and how, in this moment, I felt indifferent. Lucas positioned himself over me, his presence already feeling like home. He playfully nibbled at my earlobe. "He doesn't deserve you." As his hips moved against mine, I allowed myself to embrace that thought. We acted without caution, brief encounters when Thomas was occupied. My fingers tangled in Lucas's hair as he knelt between my legs in his father's study. The boundaries faded between errors and yearnings. Instances we ought to have fought against, water cascading over us while I stifled my sounds against his shoulder. There was a moment when we teetered on the edge of discovery. Thomas returned home ahead of schedule. Lucas hardly had a moment to pull his jeans up before he heard the click of his father's key in the lock. I adjusted my skirt, heart racing, as Thomas entered, unaware, grinning, placing a fleeting kiss on my cheek. "I've been thinking about you," he said. Lucas wore a sly grin when he thought no one was watching. That evening, tears streamed down my face in the shower. As soon as Thomas drifted off, I shot a message to Lucas. It was never meant to endure. I was aware of that. Yet, as we surrendered to impulsive choices, murmuring, "You belong to me now," I longed for it to continue, even if it meant my own ruin. Thomas's flight home faced a delay, yet his meetings were called off, a detail he conveniently omitted until his car rolled into the driveway 2 days ahead of schedule. I stood in the kitchen, still warm from the lingering touch of Lucas's lips on my skin just moments ago. When the garage door creaked open, my stomach sank. "Lillian," Lucas called from the hallway, his voice low and urgent, as the sound of Thomas's keys jingled at the door. I turned to see who had arrived. There was no opportunity to correct my smeared lipstick, no chance to clarify why my blouse was fastened incorrectly. Thomas entered, the sound of his briefcase hitting the counter resonating in the room. "Surprise," he declared, a wide grin spreading across his face. I managed to put on a smile. "You're early." His eyes darted past me to Lucas, who was lounging against the fridge, barefoot and exuding confidence. A fleeting expression crossed Thomas's face, shrouded in mystery. "You two seem occupied." The quiet lingered for just a moment too long. Lucas wore a sly grin. "I'm just assisting Lillian with the groceries." The bags remained in the car. Thomas's gaze sharpened. The dinner that evening was fraught with tension. Thomas observed us from behind his wineglass, his inquiries cutting and precise. "Have you completed that report?" Lucas: "You've been spending quite a bit of time at home recently, haven't you?" Lillian: "What's that on your neck?" I brushed my fingers over the place where Lucas's teeth had rested just hours before. A yoga accident. Lucas's foot grazed against mine beneath the table. Thomas's fork made a soft clink as it met the surface of his plate. "Amusing. You never had an affinity for yoga in the past. That was a narrow escape." I began to secure my bedroom door, not to prevent Thomas from entering, but to stop myself from wandering down the hallway to Lucas's room. It was unsuccessful. One night, I stirred awake to the sensation of fingers gliding up my thigh, Lucas's breath warm against my neck. "I've been thinking about you," he said. "Your father's down the hall." His hand moved upward, intensifies the heat. What's the most frustrating aspect? He was indeed correct. We were silent, swift, yearning. As Lucas quietly made his way back to his room, I caught the sound. The unmistakable creak of Thomas's door swinging open. I stood still. Soft footsteps glided by me. The bathroom light flickered to life. I let out a breath. Then I observed the glow of Lucas's phone on my nightstand. A message from Thomas. "We need to have a conversation." Lucas chuckled and dismissed it. "He's just angry I missed curfew." Yet. Thomas's glances lingered, his inquiries becoming more pointed. Then arrived the morning he let his briefcase slip, scattering papers across the foyer. I knelt down to assist and caught sight of it, a receipt for a private investigator, dated just yesterday. That evening, I filled 2 glasses with bourbon, one for Thomas and one for myself. As he lifted the glass to his lips, I uttered the words, "I want a divorce." His expression remained unchanged. "You're Lucas." "Right." The glass slipped from my grasp. Thomas smiled, a chill in his expression, fully aware. "I've noticed the way he gazes at you. The way you allowed him to do that. I anticipated anger, blame, not this calm assurance." He inclined his body slightly forward. "I'll take my leave now, and I'll act as if I never saw a thing." He gathered a single bag. Lucas sat in his truck, the engine humming softly. As we drove off, my phone vibrated. Thomas's last message. "You will come to regret this," Lucas remarked. "He's mistaken." Yet, as our fresh journey unfolded, one question lingered in my mind. What have I done? The motel room was infused with the sharp scent of bleach, mingling with an air of lingering regret. Lucas tossed our bags onto the single bed, as expected, and turned to me with that familiar smirk that once sent butterflies fluttering in my stomach. Now it simply caused my hands to tremble. "Are you all right?" he asked, shedding his shirt as if we hadn't just detonated our existence. I acquiesced, deceiving. He moved in closer. "He didn't lay a finger on you. His fingers pressed into my hips, and I ought to have pushed him away. I did not. This was harsher than normal, raw and primal, devoid of any illusion of affection, merely a necessity. Later, while Lucas was deep in slumber, I quietly made my way to the bathroom and retched. 3 days later, Thomas exacted his revenge. Initially, the bank reached out. Our joint accounts have been frozen. Next, an eviction notice affixed to the window of Lucas's truck. At last, an email bearing the subject line, "For your records." Attachment security footage of me confronting Lucas by the fridge. A screenshot of my search history. Can a stepmother marry her stepson? A forwarded message to Lucas's mother. Your stepson has inappropriately interacted with my wife. Lucas's phone erupted with notifications in mere minutes. Mother, what have you accomplished? Coach, you are no longer part of the team. Unknown. I trust the cost was justified by the outcome you received. He hurled the screen at the wall with force. I remained motionless, my gaze fixed on the final document, a completed divorce filing containing one harsh condition: the wife relinquishes all marital assets because of infidelity. Thomas orchestrated this, anticipated it, and allowed me to step right into it. Lucas began to indulge, not in the light-hearted beers from the fridge, but in a descent I couldn't halt. He would bang the cabinets, hold my wrist with a fierce grip, and grumble about Thomas being the cause of all the chaos. One evening, he returned with the unmistakable scent of a fragrance that didn't belong to me. I feigned ignorance. What authority did I possess to voice my grievances? It unfolded in a Waffle House at the stroke of 2 a.m. Lucas had just poured his third bourbon when I foolishly suggested, "Perhaps we ought to take it easy." His fork clattered against the plate. "Us, you mean me," he hissed, leaning across the sticky table. "You took advantage of me. You found yourself in a moment of boredom, and I happened to be present, leading to this inevitable connection between us. Admit it." The couple in the next booth paused their meal. My throat was on fire. "That's not true," he said, his voice lowering. "You long for your grand home, your affluent partner. Return to him, if that's what you choose. Let's see if he still wants you now that the truth is out." I splashed my water in his face. He chuckled, dabbing at his chin. That's the Lillian I appreciate. The following morning, I found myself waking up in solitude. Lucas's duffel bag had vanished, taking with it the $300 I had stashed away in my sock drawer. His note, hastily written on motel stationery. "You're not the first. This certainly won't be the final occurrence." Jay. I found myself laughing so hard that tears streamed down my face. Then I reached out to the sole individual who would pick up the phone. Thomas answered on the first ring. "Lillian," he said, devoid of anger or triumph, simply understanding. I shut my eyes. I longed to return home. The silence stretched on endlessly. "Then you have arrived. Take a glance outside." I drew back the curtain. Thomas's BMW sat quietly in the parking lot, poised and ready, perpetually in anticipation. I lingered for 10 minutes, observing the car, gazing at my reflection in the dirty window, smudged mascara, tangled hair, the lingering trace of Lucas's fingerprints on my collarbone. The phone rang once more. Thomas. I allowed it to go to voicemail. With a final glance, I gathered my last bag, placed the key on the dresser, and stepped outside, moving beyond the BMW, beyond the motel office, beyond all that I once believed I desired. Thomas chose not to follow. There was no obligation on his part. Some forms of punishment don't necessitate the use of chains. The aroma of cinnamon mingled with the scent of charred beans in the coffee shop. I swirled my latte, observing the foam dissipate into aimless patterns. My therapist suggested that I write, to work through the trauma by telling my story. All I penned was, "I miss the house. I long for the days of my past. I don't miss him at all. What is it about them that I long for?" That was the most heart-wrenching aspect. My phone buzzed. A calendar alert court hearing. 2 p.m. The ultimate dissolution order. Thomas had shown unexpected generosity, no alimony, yet no lawsuits followed. A fresh start. Just as I was ready to mute the notification, another message popped up. Unfamiliar voice. Turn around. My stomach plummeted. Lucas settled into the chair opposite me, sporting a confident smile and fresh ink. His hair flowed longer, his jawline more defined. He carried the scent of luxury and poor choices. "Did you think of me?" I remained unflinching. "You took my money?" He merely shrugged. "You took my dad's wife." Technically, the barista called out his name, Jesse, and he winked as he rose from his seat. A fresh beginning, a new identity, varied targets. Upon his return, he placed a neatly folded newspaper before me. In the latest news from the Society column, tech CEO Thomas Carter is set to marry marketing executive Malene Brooks. The image captured Thomas grinning, his arm draped around a blonde, much younger than him. Lucas inclined closer. He had her lined up before we even left. I took a sip of my coffee. I know. I had witnessed the emails, the hotel receipts, the deceptions I chose to overlook while being consumed by my own. Lucas's smirk disappeared. "You're not even mad." "Oh, I'm absolutely furious," I replied, placing my cup down with purpose. Simply not directed at him. Lucas held off until I was on my feet, ready to depart, before letting it fall. "She is expecting. Due in March." I was taken aback. He loomed above me as he always did. Looks like he was never facing any fertility problems. A sharp jab. Thomas and I had made countless attempts over the years, only to meet with disappointment. He placed the blame on me. Here we go. Lucas leaned in, his breath warm against my ear. "I could make you forget him again." I let out a laugh, right in his face. Then I stepped outside, moving beyond the gazes of the onlookers, beyond the barista who looked upon me with sympathy, beyond the lingering essence of the woman I once was. A letter arrived a week later, crafted from thick linen paper, with Thomas's monogram elegantly embossed in gold. Within, a single phrase, "I forgive you." No signature, no appeal for mending, just forgiveness I hadn't earned. I set it ablaze in the sink. The therapist inquires about the true reason for my presence. "Because I picked a boy instead of my own existence." I say. I pause, breathe out. "Because a part of me would do it all over again." The silence lingers. Some confessions require no absolution, only acknowledgement. Lillian's future revealed itself as a gradual, painful awakening. After parting ways with Lucas and coming to terms with the fact that she had severed all connections, she relocated to a quaint town where her history remained a secret. She toiled in the shadows of a dilapidated diner, where the manager slipped her cash under the table, his gaze lingering inappropriately when he believed she was unaware. Her hands bore the marks of countless hours spent in the kitchen, stained with coffee grounds and grease, while her once manicured nails had become chipped and brittle. Her reflection in the fractured mirror above the sink revealed a stranger, hollow cheeks, weary eyes, the sort of exhaustion that no amount of sleep could remedy. The funds scarcely stretched to meet the rent for a studio apartment, where a dripping faucet and the sounds of neighbors arguing echoed through the thin walls. Evenings drifted by in a haze of contemplation, pondering whether Thomas ever crossed her mind, and if Lucas had discovered another soul to unravel. Shame twisted in her stomach whenever she stumbled upon their names online, Thomas's sleek LinkedIn profile, his new wife's Instagram brimming with vacations and baby photos, Lucas's battles with the law, a poignant reminder of the choices he had made. Her fingers quivered as she typed, the shadows of her past chasing her relentlessly. No matter how swiftly she moved, the holidays unfolded in solitude, accompanied only by a bottle of inexpensive wine and the television's loud chatter, a futile attempt to mask the stillness around me. The handful of friends who remained in contact with her navigated the delicate situation with caution, their sympathy more suffocating than any criticism. The years melded into a relentless cycle of endurance, her allure transforming into something more resilient, subdued, the sort of woman who caught a fleeting glance and was soon overlooked. Her aspirations for transformation shattered beneath the burden of truth. On a rainy Tuesday, she stood before a community college brochure, her finger gliding along the contours of a counseling degree. A delicate and tender feeling awakened within her for the first time in years, the chance to assist other women who had lost their way, just as she once had. The path before her loomed large, yet it was not beyond reach. Her initial tentative stride toward atonement was neither grand nor theatrical, but rather subtle and serene. A certain elegance emerges only when you cease to flee from your own essence. The future was shrouded in uncertainty, yet it no longer felt devoid of hope. The burden of her errors remained significant, yet it no longer felt unbearable. The reflection before her was at last a person she could accept, if not quite adore yet.